You know it's the NFL offseason when the power rankings are rolled out post-draft. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for May 2nd, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day. Over 13.5 thousand subscriptions already. That's because of you, Raider Nation, and my man Ari. Ari does a fantastic job each and every day, and of course, we appreciate him. If you want to check him out on Twitter, hit him up at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254, and we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts are coming up in segment number 3 of today's show. We didn't have any on Wednesday's show, but we will get back to them today. Got plenty to get to. That's all coming up. Segment number 3. Segment number 2, NFL Power Rankings. Eric Edholm from NFL.com released them on NFL.com. You can check them out. We'll talk about where the Raiders are ranked in the NFL and where they're ranked, more importantly, in the AFC West. That'll come up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, as I always do. We'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Monopoly Go. And I know I've said it 1,000 times. I have admitted it. I've got a competitive side. It ain't no joke, right? And it's a big fan of Monopoly Go. That's the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. So off top, on Wednesday, the NFL released the offseason dates. They had announced them earlier in the offseason, but they kind of solidified it, corrected a few of them, and they released them again on Wednesday. So there's different phases to the offseason workout program. I've talked about it quite a bit on the show here, talking about how the Raiders are having so many people participate, and you're seeing Raiders.com and their social media team put out so many pictures and videos of the Raiders there at the facility putting in work. But just so you know, Phase 1, which for the Raiders started on April 15th, Phase 1 consists of the first 2 weeks of the programs with activities limited to meetings, strength and conditioning, and physical rehab. That's only, right? So that was April 15th, the first 2 weeks. Then Phase 2 consists of the next 3 weeks of the program. On-field workouts may include individual or group instruction and drills, as well as perfect play drills and plays with offensive players lining up across from offensive players and defensive players lining up across from defensive players, conducted at a walk-through pace. So no live contact, no team offense versus team defense is permitted. None of that as of yet. That's where the Raiders are right now in Phase 2. Phase 3 consists of the next 4 weeks of the programs. Teams may conduct a total of 10 days of organized team practice activities, a.k.a. OTAs. No live contact is permitted, but 7-on-7, 9-on-7, and 11-on-11 drills are permitted. So that'll be Phase 3. So what does that mean? Well, let me give you the dates for the offseason workout programs for the OTAs for the Raiders. May 20th and 21st, May 23rd, May 28th and 29th, May 31st, June 3rd through June 6th. Those are the OTA offseason workouts. Mandatory minicamp, June 11th through 13th. Anyone who's under contract with the Silver and Black must be in attendance or they can get fined. And rookie minicamp is coming up right around the corner, May 10th and 11th. So those are the dates to pay attention to. Then there'll be a big break, probably just about a month, and then they'll get into training camp, and we'll be back at it full throttle. Right? And we'll be talking about what we've seen from training camp, what we heard from the players, what we heard from coaches, and a whole lot more. But first and foremost, May 10th and 11th, that's rookie minicamp. That's when you'll see Brock Bowers. That's when you'll see JPJ. That's when you see many others that were selected and also undrafted free agents. You'll see them out there at the Intermountain Health Performance Center, May 10th and 11th. People have asked me about the schedule release. Q, when's the schedule release going to happen? In the NFL, they do a fantastic job. They do the little slow drip process where every single month they have something just to keep you engaged, keep you locked in, keep you excited about what's going on with the NFL. And what I'm understanding, it hasn't been officially released yet, Thursday, May 9th is going to be when the NFL schedule will be released, which is, well, next week, right? A week from today. And again, that hasn't been officially announced, but from being at the radio station and having Westwood One and others send us us, emails about different broadcasts, I believe that is going to be the day, May 9th. That's Thursday, May 9th. There could be a couple of games or preseason dates that are announced before then, maybe some international dates that are, that are announced before then. But from my understanding, that could be wrong, so don't hold me to it. It's not gospel yet. It's not set in stone. Thursday, May 9th looks like when the schedule release is going to happen. So, of course, we'll be talking about that on Friday's show. So that's just a couple little nuggets. Again, people have been asking me when the schedule is going to be released. Finally, final little soundbite, little nugget I have for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up, segment number 2, we'll get into the NFL power rankings, according to Eric Edholm from NFL.com, who's actually going to be a guest on my radio show later on this afternoon. Here's Tom Telesco, Raiders GM. He was on SiriusXM NFL Radio. He was actually on JT the Brick Show on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Wednesday, but he also was making the rounds just with the media in general. So here's just a little bit, about a minute and 15 seconds worth, or minute and a half worth of him talking to SiriusXM NFL Radio about the addition of Brock Bowers and, of course, the quarterback position. So he starts off talking about the decision to draft tight end Brock Bowers at number 13 overall.
We need guys who can score touchdowns. And the Raiders last year, we just didn't score enough. And we're at that point on the draft board where we felt there was a player on offense that could, potentially, be a difference maker for us with the ball in his hands. And then when you look at our offense right now, tight ends are our quarterback's best friend. They're easy throws, give him the ball in his hands, let him run after the catch. And Brock at Georgia, he was moved around a lot. So he was in line as a tight end. He was as a big slot. He's been split out before. He's been as a wing. So I think you can use him in a variety of ways. And we're looking to add some more juice to our offense and thought he could fit that role.
Tom, you said that you thought a lot of the quarterbacks were going to come off early. How closely did you evaluate the QBs, and was there any interest there if someone had fallen?
Well, we did a lot of work on it, obviously, on all those guys. We did a lot of work. About possibly, even moving up, but that the reality of that, it just realistically just wasn't going to happen. But yeah, like if someone had come through, certainly would have talked about it. It's something we had talked about as we went through our scenarios. If the person was the right guy for us for the future, there's no doubt. That's just the way it worked out. There was a reason why this offseason that we signed Gardner Minshew to have him here with Aiden O'Connell, to get those two guys ready to go. And Gardner's played really good football. He played very well with the Colts last year. And I thought Aiden O'Connell did an excellent job last year in a really tough situation in the second half of the season. He played really well. So those guys will battle it out here in camp, and we'll go from there.
So there you go. GM Tom Telesco talking about the Raiders need to score points. Right, and there's no doubt about that, right? The Raiders, that is one of their biggest keys. Luke Getsy is going to have to figure out how to get it done. Obviously, Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, they're going to be QB 1 and 2, TBD. They're going to determine who that is going to be during training camp. They're going to battle it out, but they've got to find a way to score more points, right? I mean, it was one of those things when we talked about last season, wow, they scored 20 points. That's fantastic. That can't be enough. They've got to find a way, like Antonio Pierce said, they've got to get to at least 24 and, preferably more than that. But they've got to find a way to do that, and Brock Bowers is going to help in that, right, with him being able to line up just about everywhere. But you hear Tom Telesco there talk about why it was important and a priority to sign Gardner Minshew as well, just in case the quarterbacks, were not there in the NFL draft. And clearly they evaluated their guys. Clearly they thought about trading up, like he mentioned. And if there was a guy that fell to him that they liked and thought that that was his guy, they were going to select him, or they had no problem selecting him at 13 overall. But it just didn't shake out that way. They went with plan B. Maybe it was plan C or D. Who knows? But they ended up with Brock Bowers, who is a fantastic player. And now it's going to be up to Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew to get the job done. But that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Little news and notes of the day. Coming up in segment number 2, we'll talk about the NFL power rankings. Where do the Raiders stack up as far as the NFL and the AFC West in particular? That's coming up in today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, we've got to take a pause for the cause, right? What's the cause? Monopoly Go, right? And I know what you're saying. Q, you already told us at the top of the show about Monopoly Go. I know, I did. I talked about it, but there's so much good stuff in this game, I can't stop from talking about it. Monopoly Go, you could team up with your friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And There's so much to get. You can get these unique stickers that you could trade with your friends to complete albums for big prizes. You can get cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. They've got hilarious emojis where you could taunt your friends, and that's one of my favorite parts of the whole thing is taunting my friends, especially Vegas Jess. There's nothing more I enjoy doing than taunting Vegas Jess because, well, if you don't know the story, he pushed off in the small of my back. That's a whole nother story. He denies it to this day, but he did it. So I like to taunt him when I get the opportunity, and Monopoly Go allows me to do that. Also, it's new and exciting every day. They constantly have changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasures or a whole lot more. There's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench, go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store, and game is on. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to go over the NFL power rankings post-draft, right? And these don't mean a whole lot. This is just an opinion piece, but I could appreciate it. Eric Edholm from NFL.com. He's a good dude. He's a good dude that puts out some really good work. He's going to be a guest on my radio show later on this afternoon, and this is exactly what we're going to be talking about, the power rankings. So I like to do this, and I like to kind of take a look at where the Raiders stack as far as the NFL goes, but more importantly, where they stack in the AFC West. More times than not, the Raiders are picked to be at the very bottom. We know who's going to be at the top, but there are more times than not picked to be at the very bottom, and more times than not, these experts are wrong. Right? It ends up being the Chargers or the Broncos that end up pulling up the rear. But I wanted to go over what Eric Edholm had to say when it came to the power rankings that he put out on NFL.com. You could check them out. So I like to start at the bottom and work my way to the top. Coming in at number 28 and number 4 in the AFC West, that's the Denver Broncos. They did not move up. They did not move down from the last time the power rankings were released. He says, it's always felt like Bo Nix and Sean Payton were going to end up together. Part of that had to do with the fact that the Broncos were hamstrung, both financially and in terms of draft capital. But there's also a style crossover that makes sense. With Peyton known for his screen packages and the timing and rhythm of his system, Nick's thriving in a similar environment up at Oregon. So number 28 overall is the Denver Broncos and dead last in the AFC West. And there wasn't a whole lot to hang his hat on when it came to the Denver Broncos, except for they didn't really have very much money and they didn't have any much draft capital. They spent a lot of the draft capital on Russell Wilson. They spent a lot of the draft capital on Sean Payton. And, of course, the money as well. So they were in a position that wasn't real great. And I don't think that anyone should be surprised by that, even though we're going to hear, oh, the Broncos, they're going to take that next step. Oh, the Broncos, Sean Payton, you better watch out for him, even though the Raiders have clearly dominated them over the past handful of games. Does that mean that they're going to go sweep them this year? I mean, not necessarily, but the Raiders have been in a really good position for, 8-9 games in a row against the Denver Broncos, so they really have had their way with them. So who's the next team? Of course, in bottom to top order when it comes to NFL power ranking, well, that's where you get the Raiders. They're at 23, so they're 5 spots up from Denver. But what caught my attention the most is they're down a spot. Remember, this is post-draft. So you're telling me that they went into the draft and they were at 22. They came out of the draft and they dropped to 23? Like, that kind of blew my mind. So Eric Edholm had to say, once 6 quarterbacks, namely Michael Penix Jr., went off the board ahead of the Raiders' picks, it really streamlined their options. But getting Brock Bowers at number 13, that's a steal to me, until proven otherwise. Maybe Penix would have qualified as the all-time honorary Al Davis selection if the Raiders had taken a first-round gamble on him. But as a high-upside athletic playmaker, Bowers isn't far off. Bowers can help this team, and people freaking out about having multiple quality tight ends, Bowers and Mayer, will hopefully see that down the road. The quarterback duo of Minshew and O'Connell might not be the most spine-tingling combination, but giving them a decent cast of targets can't hurt. The defense also should carry a fairly heavy share of load. No, this isn't yet a Super Bowl caliber roster, but the Raiders have gotten better this offseason. So again, question mark. The Raiders have gotten better this offseason, but they dropped a spot in the power rankings, right? So again, really blows my mind because there was nothing that was actually disrespectful about what he had to say about the Raiders and their roster. Didn't even really question not getting a quarterback like many others have, right? Just said, okay, hey, the other 6 quarterbacks were gone. They went out and got Brock Bowers, and, well, he's a hell of a player. Matter of fact, the way that he phrased this, and this is something I'll talk to him about later on my show this afternoon, Raider Nation Radio 920, Unnecessary Roughness, is it almost sounds like he would have ranked the Raiders a little lower if they had selected Michael Penix Jr., right? Because he says, Penix would have qualified as the all-time honorary Al Davis selection. And we know the disrespect that Al gets, right? Oh, Al would have done that because he's fast. Al would have done that because he has a strong arm. Al would have done that because he's bigger, faster, stronger. Like, we get it, right? And we know towards the end of Al's life, rest in peace, what it was all about, right? We remember all the picks that didn't pan out and the reason why they were selected. We remember Darius Hayward-Bay. We remember Jamarcus Russell. We remember Bruce Campbell. We remember, insert this player there. Like, I get it. But it almost sounds like if he had drafted Michael Penix Jr., that they would have been listed a little bit lower, but they have him at 23 -1, but they've had and gotten better this offseason. Their words, not mine. The Raiders have gotten better this offseason. Let's drop them down one. Just confusing to me. The Chargers come in at 15, which is up +1 on Eric Edholm's NFL power rankings as far as NFL.com. You can check him out. And he says this: I'll probably bump the Chargers up 2 or 3 spots between now and training camp, hoping many won't notice, right? That's wild. He said he's going to bump them up between now and training camp, even though there's nothing going to be really added to the roster. He said back in the bolts in recent years or decades has been an exercise in futility, but I still lump them in with some of the biggest offseason winners for landing Jim Harbaugh and all the players he's brought in since, and I'll continue to do so. 5 years from now, we'll see if taking tackle Joe Alt 5th overall over Malik Neighbors was the right call, but I definitely see them thinking, I definitely see the thinking on some level. Has Los Angeles done enough at wide receiver or cornerback to jump into one of the top contender tiers? Well, we'll see. My suspicion is no, not yet. But second-round pick Ladd McConkey could be the Chargers' wide receiver 3 immediately, and they easily could find a less costly veteran to round that group out over the summer. So their draft pick could be wide receiver 3, not wide receiver 1, not wide receiver 2, but wide receiver 3, which is nothing to, write home about and say, oh, man, that's going to be the game changer. But they have him all the way up at 15, and I know a lot of this is based off Jim Harbaugh, and I get it. He's a guy that's won no matter where he's gone, but to be at 15 and know that they were the bottom dwellers of the AFC West just a season ago, again, blows my mind. I get it, though. Jim Harbaugh effect, okay, they get raised up. I'm just interested, and I'm not trying to say, hey, I'd rather have Jim Harbaugh than Antonio Pierce, because I don't. I love what AP's doing with the Raiders, but I'm interested where the Raiders would have been ranked if Jim Harbaugh got that job instead of AP. I'm just curious. I'm not trying to say, hey, let's go back and revisit, and maybe the Raiders should have done this, that, and the other. No, not at all. Just curious. And, of course, the Chiefs at number 1, 2-time Super Bowl champs. I don't have to really say anything about them, right? I mean, everyone, they're number 1 in the league, number 1 in the AFC West. So in the AFC West, the Chiefs are first, the Chargers second, Raiders ranked 3rd, and the Denver Broncos rounded out at number 4. They're 28, the Raiders 23, the Chargers 15, and the Chiefs at number 1, according to Eric Edholm from NFL.com. So I'll talk to him about that later on in my show. If he brings some good stuff, I'll bring it to the table on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. But really interesting. Didn't slam what the Raiders have done this offseason. Matter of fact, admitted that they've gotten better, but yet they dropped in the power rankings. I'm glad the power rankings don't really mean a whole lot, right? It's good offseason conversation, but it just, to me, blows my mind a little bit and, gives more fuel to the fire of, well, the national media hates the silver and black. I don't feel that way. I'm part of the national media, but I understand when you see something like this when it comes to the power rankings. That's what I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. It's coming up next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. And, man, I'll tell you, NBA playoffs, NHL, man, they are fun when it comes to the playoffs. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money line, player props, and a whole lot more, like slam dunks, three-pointers, home runs, slap shots, whatever the case may be. They've got you. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start off with a text from Gonzo Raider 505. It says, Q. Gonzo Raider here from the 505. Happily surprised by the NFL draft. I think solid picks and with coaching development could make them NFL generation talent. I don't like to put labels on these players as far as the comparisons to Hall of Famers or current stars, as they haven't proved themselves in the NFL. But as always, I'm staying optimistic and super hyped for this season. Thank you for all you do, and let's go Raiders. So Gonzo Raider in the 505, very pleased with the Raiders draft that they came away with, led by Brock Bowers and, of course, Jackson Powers Johnson, a guy I'm looking forward to, a guy that can play center guard out of Oregon. Of course, they listed him as a guard. And I do think it was a really solid draft class. I'm not going to put a label on him either, but if the Raiders consistently can have draft classes where they're coming away with really good players and adding talent to the cupboard, and all of a sudden it becomes one of those things that's a routine where you're used to seeing really good drafts and you don't be surprised like you expected. Like I say at the Baltimore Ravens all the time, fans of the Baltimore Ravens expect really good drafts because that's what their team does. So it's not like this like, oh man, this was a good draft, this is a surprise. It's not, because they're used to that. The Raiders need to find a way, and hopefully they can do that, right? We were hoping that was going to happen with Reggie McKenzie after he had his first really good draft in 2014. We were hoping that Mike Mayock was going to be able to provide that because he's the NFL draft guru for NFL Network. We're hoping Dave Ziegler was going to be able to do that after he got his first full draft. After the first draft he had, he traded for Devontae Adams, so he didn't have a first or second round pick. But you were hoping that he was going to be able to have a consistent opportunity to get really good players. Didn't get another opportunity after 2023. So now Tom Telesco comes along. Feel really good about it. Obviously, we got to see how these players play out, but you feel pretty good about the draft and what ended up shaking out for the Raiders. Can they consistently do that year in and year out? That's what the hope is. That's the only hope that you can have, is they can consistently do that. Once the draft becomes boring, that's when you're in a good position. So thanks for the text. Do appreciate you, Gonzo. Up next, got a call from John in Oakland. He's calling to make a bold prediction about who he believes the Raiders quarterback of the future will be. Here he is, John in Oakland.
Hey, Q. This is John in Oakland. I just want to call in and say I'm going to be the first to go on the line and say that Deion Sanders, his son, might be our next quarterback. Looking at all the quarterbacks that was taken, looks like everybody pretty much has their quarterback room filled. Of course, there's going to be some failures next year. But right now, as I see it, we are in number one need of a true number one quarterback, no matter how these two other guys do. And I'm calling it right now. Sanders might be our next quarterback. And, you know, if he continues to play well, which I've seen him do, he just needs some talent around him. You know, he could be our second choice behind Jaden Daniels, who obviously we probably wasn't going to get. But Sanders, he might be a guy that's gettable for us just based on needs of next year's draft. So I'm just putting it in the air right now that I believe that might be our next quarterback, and I won't be mad with getting him. You know, I think he has a lot of potential, and, you know, and I think he would fit our system well, you know, and his pedigree should fit what we want to do. So that's all I got, man. I just want to be first, because if you're not first, you're last. Shakur Sanders, Las Vegas Raiders quarterback next year. Thanks, Q. I'm out. John in Oakland.
John, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And, I mean, that's a hell of a thought early on, right? There's so much time between now and next season, let alone next draft season. I don't want to go there. I really don't want to go there. Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, they're the quarterbacks right now. They're going to battle it out in training camp. We'll worry about the draft and who could be the quarterback of the future later on in the future, right? I'm not going to worry about it right now. Shedeur Sanders appears to be a good quarterback, but he's got a lot of work to do this year at Colorado to really solidify himself. And I guarantee you there'll be 2 or 3 quarterbacks that we're talking about by the end of the season. It's like, wow, wait, hold on now. That guy's a player, right? I mean, because, look, not too many people were talking about Jaden Daniels at this time last year. A lot of people were talking about Jaden Daniels as a 3rd or a 4th round pick. The year before, nobody was talking about Anthony Richardson as a top 5 pick. They were talking about a 3rd or 4th round pick. Then all of a sudden he became a top 5 pick, right? So there'll be someone that we start talking about much later. The later on in the year that we talk about the draft, the better, right? I hope that we don't talk about the draft as far as who the Raiders are going to be looking at until at least January. That's the goal. That's my goal every year, is to make it to the next calendar year. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But for the most part, the Raiders have been in it the last couple years at least. Well, at least, what was it, 2022 they weren't really in it? No, 2022 they weren't in it. We started talking about the draft a little bit early. But 2023, I mean, they were in it till what, week 17? That's when they lost to the Colts and they were officially eliminated from the playoffs. So that's not bad. That was this calendar year, so that's not bad. Hopefully that happens again. The later on, the better, because as you know, once it is draft season, as we just found out, it is all about the draft. John, thanks for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Heath in Washington. Said, Q, I like the picks that we got, but I feel bad for Adams, who might have to wait another year because he has nobody who could throw the deep ball to him. I like the fact that they tried to go up and get Penix, but it didn't happen. But how long does Adams want to work with second-string quarterbacks? I just hope that our quarterbacks can just win, baby. That's Heath from Washington. Thanks so much for the text. And, you know, the thing about Devontae, and I know that his first year with the Raiders, Derek Carr did stretch the field and get it to him on deep balls quite a bit. He's a guy, if you remember Green Bay, he didn't really get the deep balls that often. More times than not, Aaron Rodgers just got him the rock and let him go to work. That's where he really, butters his bread. Aiden O'Connell can do that. Gardner Minshew could do that. I mean, they're not guys that are just going to air it out and bomb it, but O'Connell has a strong arm. He can throw the ball deep if he needs to. I think you're looking at a guy like Trey Tucker to stretch the field. I think you're looking at a guy, like Devontae to kind of play that, intermediate role and be able to, especially in this West Coast offense, be able to catch those short passes and get those yak yards because the dude is an animal with the ball in his hands. So I don't think that you have to worry about that. Devontae is excited and fired up to be a Raider. I'm excited and fired up to see what he looks like in year 3, and especially under a coach that he wants to play for and he's fired up about and understands. And Luke Getsy, he's familiar with him from his time in Green Bay. So I think he's gonna thrive this year. I really do. I think it's gonna be almost a rejuvenation for not only Devontae Adams, but guys like Jacoby Myers, who had a really good year. I think you're going to see a lot. Michael Mayer, Brock Bowers. And look, Trey Tucker, the guy I forget about all the time, he can stretch the field because he's got that speed. So looking forward to that. Thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Dominique in the Show Me State. He's calling to talk about the Raiders draft. And let me tell you, overall, he's happy with the Raiders draft. Here he is, Dominique in the Show Me State.
Hey, Q, this is Dominique from the Show Me State. Overall, I am very happy with the draft, man. I think Telesco and company done a great job. I give it a B+. The only thing, and I hope he proves me wrong, is Luke Getsy. With all the weapons we have, he's got to find a way to utilize everybody and have everyone getting a piece of the pie. That's my only concern. I don't have a lot of faith in him. Like I said, hopefully he proves me wrong. Hopefully, we have a top, let's say 8 to 10 offense and everyone's getting a piece of the pie and we're rolling. But overall, I am very happy with the draft. The only pick I wasn't too crazy about was DJ Glaze. But hopefully he proves me wrong and he works out as well. But overall, I am very happy, and I haven't felt this way regarding a draft in a long time. So, looking forward to it. A couple of my favorite picks actually was Trey Taylor. Love that pick. And also Richardson, the cornerback. Huge upside. Very athletic kid. He's got all the physical tools and traits. It may take him a year to develop, but I think it'll be great. Other than that, thanks, brother, and just let me know what you think about Getsy. All right, bye-bye.
Big Neek, thanks so much for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And look, I think Telesco did a fine job, right? He got some quality players, got 8 draft picks, 7 rounds, 2 in the 7th round, right? Didn't have to move at all, didn't trade up, didn't trade back, just stayed where he was, let the board fall to him, and took the best available player in his opinion, right? Best available player for sure the first 2 rounds, and then started to, fill some areas in need a little bit later on. But I think all in all, he really did a good job with the draft. Of course, there's going to be a difference of opinions, but from everything I've seen so far, I think most people think that, they had a really solid draft. I'm not trying to put a grade on it, like it's got to be an A or a B or whatever. I think it was solid. I think he did a solid job, and I think he put some really good talent on that Raiders 90-man roster. Now it's up to them to, take that, the coaching staff, that is, take that talent and really develop it and make them players with this team. So thanks so much for that call. Do appreciate you, and I'm glad that overall you're happy with what the Raiders were able to do. Just got time for a couple more. Got a text from Taylor in the 503. Said, what's up, Q? It's Taylor from the 503. That's Portland, Oregon. I've been out of town for my wedding, which fell on the same day as the second round of the draft. Haven't had a chance to listen to your post-draft or during draft coverage yet, but I had a few thoughts about Brock Bowers. Adam Rank made a what teams should do mock draft and gave us Brock Bowers. The only mock that had him at 13 with Las Vegas. He commented that Getsy likes to run 12 personnel, and Bowers is in that role for our team is going to be straight fire. Can't deny the talent. We need more playmakers on offense. The last 2 years, we've gotten some ultra talent around 1, rock solid around 2 picks. If they're all developed correctly, we could be cooking with grease. might just need some prime-time quarterback for 25. You know what I'm saying? Much love, Raider Nation. That's Taylor in the 503. And shout out to Adam Rank. I actually had him on my radio show, and it was when I was filling in on the morning tailgate with Vinny Bonsignor, and he said he was putting out that mock draft of what what teams should do as opposed to what he thinks teams were going to do. And I didn't realize, I didn't pay attention that he had mocked Brock Bowers to the Raiders, but you heard Tom Telesco in segment number 1. He said, we need to score touchdowns, right? We need playmakers. That's exactly what you said. It's exactly what Adam Rank said. So I got to get Adam back on the show to kind of, comment on the Raiders getting Brock Bowers and the fact that he was on their list, on his list of what the Raiders should do. Well, the Raiders did do that. So thanks for that, man. The little nugget. That's pretty good. Pretty cool that you pointed that out. Appreciate you. We'll close out with a call from the 619. Didn't give me a name, but he's calling from the 619, calling to talk about the offense that he believes offensive coordinator Luke Getsy will run in 2024 and gives us a suggestion of what we need to do. Here's a call from the 619.
Hey, what's up, Q? Man, I don't know what it is. I've been calling in and trying to get on, get chosen, and for some reason I haven't been, man. But regardless, I wanted to talk about Luke Getsy. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this all works out for Luke Getsy. A lot of people are saying now that we got Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, we're going to run 2 tight end sets. I got a little nugget for Raider fans. What I would do is go back and look at his time he spent with the Packers in 2020 and 2021. Those were Aaron Rodgers' biggest years, and also Devontae Adams played lights out for those 2 years. During that time, Getsy was passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. So Aaron Rodgers did win MVP the year of 2020. And keep in mind, that was a West Coast scheme under Michael Four. So that scheme, if you look at it, what they ran there compared to what Getsy was running in 2022 and 2023 with the Bears, completely different offenses. So I would check those highlights out. The Green Bay Packers season in 2020 and 2021 as well. So you guys can get another just a different perspective on what to expect from Getsy. And I think when he went to the Bears, I think he tailored his offense towards his quarterback. This is why we saw a lot of RPO and run schemes. And so I don't think Raiders are going to do much of that because they don't have that quarterback. So what I would do, Raider fans, just check out some of the Packers highlights when Getsy was there. And I think you'll see that what type of offense we should be expecting. And just for confirmation, just check out the Devontae Adams and Max Crosby podcast. Devontae Adams in that podcast says he's looking forward to the scheme they're going to run. He said there's a lot of familiarity from before, and he's obviously referring to Getsy and his time at the Packers. So that's just a key note there to keep an eye on. Thanks, Q. Keep up the good work.
Thanks so much for the call, my man. Apologize that I hadn't get your calls on the show any earlier. I just get so many sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle. It's nothing personal. Next time, give us your name, though, so I don't have to say it's a call from the 619. As far as the offense, it's kind of hard to determine what's going to go on outside of the fact that it's a West Coast offense, right? We've only seen Getsy as an actual offensive coordinator in Chicago, and we know how that worked out. When he was in Green Bay, as you mentioned, he was a quarterback coach, and passing game coordinator. So he wasn't the offensive coordinator. So, it's going to be a little bit different. There's probably elements of it that are going to be the same, and it's a little bit different when you have a Hall of Famer at the quarterback position. Aaron Rodgers will walk into the Hall of Fame when he's done playing, and he'll wait for the 5 years to pass so he can get that gold jacket. So it's a little bit different. I'm not saying you're wrong what it's going to look like, but I can't just say, yeah, that's what it's going to look like because that's what he did in Green Bay, because that's not what he did in Green Bay. He was the quarterback coach, passing game coordinator. It's a little different than being the OC. Not to mention the offense, what it could look like. He's also got to call the plays. And remember, calling plays is not like Madden. It's not A, B, C, and D that you're choosing from, right? I mean, you're calling a play in the first quarter to set up something else in the fourth quarter, right? You're ideally playing chess, not checkers. Right, I mean, it's a big ultimate chess match, and you're doing that, and you're hoping that there's a good rhyme and reason. You saw Bo Hardegree when he took over as the interim play caller for the Raiders last year. He struggled at times. First time he did it. Getsy, first time he did in Chicago, struggled. Right, he got better at times with Justin Fields, but he still wasn't wasn't all that. So he's going to have to get into a rhythm. He's going to have to figure out how to get it done, and we'll see if he can do that. But I do like the fact that he's the offensive coordinator, he's the play caller, and the head coach is not that guy. The head coach is Antonio Pierce, who's a defensive-minded guy, a guy who's going to let all the other coaches do their job. I think ideally that's the way you do it, but you do see a handful of coaches still around the league that call their plays, either it's offense or call the defense. I like the fact that AP is the coach, and he just CEOs everybody and lets them do what they're supposed to do. So thanks so much for that call. Like I said, man, next time you hit us up, let us know your name so I don't have to call you the guy from the 619. But thank you so much for that call. We still got a text from Raider Eddie in Denver. We'll get that on tomorrow's show. We'll get some more good conversation, some news and notes, and, of course, we'll close out the week really strong on the Locked On Raiders podcast because, well, that's what we do. So until Friday's edition, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.